Hi everyone, I'm Hayley. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you all about the books that have changed my life. I know, I told this to my friend and she was like, that's dramatic. And I was like, well, yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a reader, I'm a writer, and I'm a Leo. I'm literally the most dramatic person you may ever meet in your life. Literally an hour after my breakdown, I'll be like, what's wrong with you? Everything is fine. You're fine. Shut up. That's just how I roll. But actually, I don't think that this video is that dramatic because I read a lot. I use reading as a coping mechanism. Some may say it's unhealthy. I don't care. They have changed my life in some ways, whether it's changed my perspective on reading, actually changed my perspective on life or certain ideas. Sexuality is a big one. I don't think I ever would have realized myself as a human being and like my sexuality if I hadn't read books that freely discuss sexuality in ways that I never experienced in my life. So I'm really grateful to books for doing that for me. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about all these books. But before we start, I want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, Book of the Month. I've been working with Book of the Month for the past few months. I really adore them. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book service. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover books they love. Every month, their teams vet hundreds of books and curates a list of new and early release titles so that you can spend less time researching and more time reading. Book of the Month is risk-free, so you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged. They have the best price for new release hardcover fiction. You can get your first book for just $9.99 with the code Hayley. Now I'm going to tell you about their 5 picks for July. So let's get into it. Their thriller pick is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. Shack up with your quarantine bae, they said. It will be totally awesome and not terrible, they said. So this book is a murder mystery. 2 people come together at the start of quarantine and decide to move in. And after just a few weeks, detectives show up at the door and find a dead body. Talk about quarantine struggles. Anyway, I'm really intrigued by that. Their historical fiction pick, Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson. Grace and Eliza are fire and ice, but when called to serve their country, they forge an unlikely bond and prove heroes. First of all, you know I love to support debut authors of color, and I'm really interested to see the role that Black women played in wars in the past, because I feel like we don't hear enough about their stories. So I'm really interested. Their other thriller pick, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. 2 dads with a very particular set of skills attempt to solve the mystery of their son's gruesome death. It's always the murder mysteries that pull me in. I can't help it. Their other historical fiction pick, The People We Keep by Allison Larkin. Like the perfect summer mixtape, a coming-of-age story about hitting the open road and finding yourself along the way. That sounds so heartwarming. I honestly need a really happy, soft, warm read right now. After all these thrillers, I need something that's gonna make me feel a little bit of joy, you know? And last but not least, their contemporary fiction pick, We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lange. This big-hearted story of an Irish-American family is for anyone who's ever left home only to be drawn back again. This cover is so cute. I really love the clovers. I saw this and I was like, wait, I know a Brennan. I don't know these Brennans, but I just thought it was fun. Those are the 5 picks of July for Book of the Month. Be sure to click the link in my description and use my code Hayley in order to sign up for Book of the Month and get your first book for just $9.99. Thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. So I have a pretty wide range of books here. I have nonfiction, I have fantasy, I have young adult, historical. I mean, I only have 5 books, but there's a range here. So hopefully there's a little something for everyone. I feel like I read a lot of different things. The most that I read is fantasy, but surprisingly, there's only 1 fantasy book in this list. And I also just want to say, not all of these books are my favorite books, but they are just books that have really influenced me in some way. So yeah, I really learned from them. And I hope that when you read these books, not if, but when, because you will read them, I hope that you enjoy them, and I hope that you also learn something from them. Some of these books I've already talked about on my channel, so like if you see it and you roll your eyes, I'm sorry, but here I am. The first book I have is When the Emperor Was Divine by Julie Otsuka. This is a historical fiction novel that follows a Japanese-American family who is sent to an internment camp in Utah. I read this for school in 10th grade, and I just remember being so amazed by it because it was so like educational, but kind of in a subtle way, because obviously it's not like it's informational because it's a historical book and it gives you like real information that actually happened to people, but it obviously doesn't read like a textbook. Like, it's historical fiction. There's beautiful prose and a plot and a full-on storyline. But what really amazed me with this book was the writing style that Julie Otsuka used and the techniques that she used. Like, this is when I really started to understand metaphors and symbolism, because there's just so much packed into this book. It's a really, really short book, but every word is placed very specifically. When Julie Otsuka turned this book into her editor, she only had like 7 edits to give her. And the author was like, that's great because I put everything in here in a particular place for a certain reason. And so if she had to change it, she would have been really unhappy with it. And just knowing how intentional every word was and how much that influences the story is just so incredible to me, because it's a really, really powerful story. And I just remember sitting in class and unpacking every single metaphor and symbol and just thinking that this woman is absolutely amazing. And I learned so much about the history of this country, so much of our past that is like hidden because we're ashamed of it, no matter like how important and how brutal it is. And she did it in so few pages with such beautiful language, but it's like such a brutal, devastating story. It's such a brilliant book. I definitely have already talked about this in one of my other videos, but I need to talk about it more because it's amazing. The next book I have is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is a young adult fantasy novel that is based off of West African mythology. When this book came out, or like even before it came out, it was really hyped up because there's not a whole lot of representation in fantasy. Getting a fantasy that was based off of Nigerian mythology and folklore and history was really, really big at the time. I remember being so amazed by the author because she got like such a huge deal for the book and everyone was so excited. She pitches it as Black Panther but with magic, because that's like exactly what it is. And this book isn't like my favorite book of all time. Honestly, when I read it, I realized that I was more so here for what the author was trying to do with the book than what I actually read. But this book really influenced me because I remember watching an interview with Tomi Adeyemi and she was saying how she really wanted to educate people and kind of like raise awareness while also like writing fantasy book, because fantasy is like her favorite genre to write. And she didn't want to feel like she had to make something like super informational, but she wanted it to be fun but also like really important. She wrote this book with the purpose to implement the themes and the message of Black Lives Matter and police brutality. Those things are like really prevalent in this book. And what's so amazing about this book is that every character in this book is Black. It's just so amazing to see strong Black characters in positions of power and facing oppression and having that bravery and being strong. And I just remember it really inspired me because I wanted to write fantasy, but I kind of felt like I was betraying myself by either catering to like white audiences and like not being true to myself, but also I felt like I wanted to write about something that felt more real to my experience. And I didn't think I could do that because I was like, fantasy is not real. But she combined and opened a dialogue of things going on in real life with fantasy, and I thought that that was so brilliant. I'm really amazed by Tomi Adeyemi. I love that she was able to write about something that she loves while also like including part of her own experience and representing many other Black people's experiences. So this was a game changer for me as well. The next book, I'm sure you all can guess because I never, and I mean ever, shut up about it. I literally have a whole video about it. That is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I've read this book twice. Every single time I read it, I come up with something new. I don't come up with something new. I come out of it with something. I don't come up with anything. Toni Morrison is the mastermind here. I am obsessed with Toni Morrison. This isn't even really just like about Beloved, but it's really about all of her books, even though I haven't read all of her books, but I read a lot of her essays, and Beloved and The Bluest Eye are my favorite of her books. And I just love how she writes about the Black experience in America, because it just goes to show like we're not a monolith. And while we all do have this shared generational trauma from slavery, from racism, from like Jim Crow laws, from literally everything our ancestors have been through, there still are such like niche experiences that everyone has, yet still she's able to like relate it back to everyone and tell a story that can touch everyone. It's just incredible how much she can say in just a few sentences. And I just think everyone needs to read Toni Morrison because she's brilliant. And I honestly, I don't even know what more I could say. Beloved is about a woman who escapes slavery, but the trauma and like the horrors of that past of her in slavery follow her literally in the form of a ghost. There are just so many ways to look at it, because it's like her family carries that weight of the trauma that even their ancestors before them experienced. And you know, they understand the pain of the people in the Middle Passage, and they understand the pain of slaves on the plantation, and that continues on with them throughout their lives. Even as the world makes more progress, they still feel that pain, like they're still haunted by it, and they still remember all of it, even if they didn't didn't experience it explicitly themselves. I specifically like Beloved because she writes from different point of views, but the main point of view is from a Black woman. And so like while we do get a Black man's perspective, I do think like obviously me as a Black woman, it's like different. I like relate to it more, but also I do think that the Black woman's experience is very, very different than the Black man's experience. There's a different level of value and trauma as slaves and as freed slaves, and you know, later on. I like how she addresses that in this book. She also in The Bluest Eye talks about how gender and sexuality play a role in the way children grow up and are influenced by society's standards. So The Bluest Eye is about this little Black girl who dreams and hopes of being white and having blue eyes because that's what she believes is beautiful. That's what everyone around her tells her is beautiful. She has like an insanely rough childhood because of like where she is and who she is as a young Black girl, and it just really emphasizes how unprotected and vulnerable Black girls and Black women are in America. Toni Morrison, she blows my mind every single time. I don't know which one I like more, honestly. I think her essays are a bit more straightforward and her books are like super dense and kind of hard to understand at times, but I think that's what makes them so amazing because there's always something new that you can take away from it. Like no matter how many times you read the book, you're always gonna find something new. There's so much to unpack. She's just phenomenal. Following up on being Black in America, I have a nonfiction book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. I was gonna say the nonfiction version of Beloved because Beloved is all about like the trauma of being a Black person in America, and The New Jim Crow is that as well. It talks about how racism has evolved. It's never gone away. It's just evolved. You've gone from having slavery and slave catchers to having incarcerated Black people and police officers and prisons. And basically prisons are like a new form of slavery. But yeah, this book specifically talks about the rebirth of this caste-like system that has placed African Americans, specifically African American men, as permanent second-class citizens and as being like overly incarcerated. And it goes into how that shift happened from being enslaved people without full rights to hundreds of years later being treated as less than people, despite everyone saying there's been so much progress made. Has there been? It's really hard to read knowing like all the cold hard facts about everything, but it's also really eye-opening because I feel like, especially as a Black person in America, there are a lot of people that try and like tell you how you should really feel and try and tell you that your feelings aren't real or that they're like not valid. And so to read something like this and have everything validated, it sucks to, you know, have these negative things confirmed, but also it's nice to feel for once that we are being seen and that the problem is being addressed somehow. So this is really eye-opening and also incredible. The last book that I have is another nonfiction, and that is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. So this book is a memoir, and I just want to give some triggers for sexual assault before I get into this book because this book was actually written by the woman who was sexually assaulted on Stanford campus, and her case blew up. You know, Brock Turner, that nasty boy. The book talks heavily about that. It talks about like her life before the assault, during the assault, how everything changed for her afterwards. First of all, Chanel Miller is a fantastic writer. I don't really know what I was expecting going into it, but I thought it was going to be almost like a journal type feel, but it was like, I don't even know how to explain it, but I really recommend the audiobook because she narrates it herself. She doesn't just talk about herself and her experience. Well, obviously that's like a huge part. That's literally the whole story. She also talks about her experience with the justice system and like going into court and how messed up that system is. And she really brings to light how so many people are not receiving justice because people in the legal system don't want to do their jobs. They don't really want to help people, and how specifically society treats women so terribly. It's literally not just frat guys or like the bad guys, but it's also the people that are supposed to protect you, people in court who are supposed to be listening to your story, the detectives who like don't even want to believe you, even friends and some family members who want to doubt you and, you know, look at you differently because of something that happened to you. It's just crazy to think that she experienced all of that. Then when you think about it, there are so many other people who also experienced that, and there still is barely any change in regards to how people people react to sexual assault cases and how people treat victims of sexual assault. And so reading this book, it was really sad, but also like really informative and really touching to hear her story, how she dealt with it, how she coped with everything, and also her message to not only women who have experienced sexual assault, but also other women, because it affects every woman, whether it's like you've been assaulted or whether you are fearing being assaulted. That fear looms over all of us. I honestly think it's the best memoir that I've ever read. I think that more people should read it because it talks about trauma in a way that I've never seen before. It's obviously very personal to Chanel Miller. You can tell that she put her whole heart into it and that she wants other people to learn from what she went through and learn from what she has to say. The book is so incredible. I enjoyed all of these books because they all touched me in some way. Yeah, I really hope that you will read them and you will check them out. Let me know if you've read these books, how you feel about them, what you thought. I'm super curious to know. So yeah, don't forget to comment down below. Remember to like this video. And also don't forget to click my link in the description down below and use my code Hayley to sign up for Book of the Month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time with another video. Bye.